Hello, adventurers, and welcome to another Gamebook reading. Today we're going to be reading The Cave of Time by Edward Packard. I recently had a request on one of my other videos to read The Return to the Cave of Time, and I'd like to be reading that. I haven't actually read this one yet, The Cave of Time, so I thought, let's go ahead and read this one first. I'm not sure if the other one is. It sounds like it's a continuation of this, so we're gonna read The Cave of Time today. And I don't actually own Return to the Cave of Time, so I put a hold on it on the local library, and hopefully we'll be having that soon. Let's get started with The Cave of Time. From the back of the book, it says, "You are the hero of your own adventure. You are lost in a strange, dimly lit cave. Gradually, you can make out two passageways. One curves downward to the right, the other leads upward to the left. It occurs to you that the one leading down may go to the past, and the one leading up may go to the future. If you take the left branch, turn to page 20. If you take the right branch, turn to page 61. If you walk outside of the cave again, turn to page 21. Alright, so this is The Cave of Time by Edward Packard and illustrated by Granger. You've hiked through Snake Canyon once before while visiting your Uncle Howard at Red Creek Ranch, but you never noticed any cave entrance. It looks as though a recent rock slide has uncovered it. Though the late afternoon sun is striking the opening of the cave, the interior remains in total darkness. You step inside a few feet, trying to get an idea of how big it is. As your eyes become used to the dark, you see what looks like a tunnel ahead, dimly lit by some kind of phosphorescent material on its walls. The tunnel walls are smooth, as if they were shaped by running water. After 20 feet or so, the tunnel curves. You wonder where it leads. You venture in a bit further, but you feel nervous being alone in such a strange place. You turn and hurry out. A thunderstorm may be coming, judging by how dark it looks outside. Suddenly you realize the sun has long since set, and the landscape is lit only by the pale light of the full moon. You must have fallen asleep and woken up hours later, but then you remember something even more strange. Just last evening, the moon was only a slim crescent in the sky. You wonder how long you've been in the cave. You are not hungry. You don't feel you have been sleeping. You wonder whether to try to walk back home by moonlight or whether to wait for dawn rather than risk losing your footing on the steep and rocky trail. If you decide to start back home, turn to page 4. If you decide to wait, turn to page 5. Now, also, I will add, now that we've begun the adventure, with this read-through, we're allowed one redo, because it's pretty likely we're not going to make the correct path the first time through. I'm just going to go blindly, and we're allowed one redo. And if we ultimately fail, then I'm going to, for your enjoyment, I'm going to try to find the best possible path, and we'll just continue the entire adventure for the best possible path, so that you can get the proper ending. Okay, now back to the cave. So, are we going to start for home? Turn to page 4, or try to wait? Turn to page 5. I'm going to be honest with you guys. If this was me, and I've done this many times, I would actually just hike in the moonlight. So I'm going to go ahead and start back home. Let's turn to page 4. As you start walking back toward the ranch, you notice the trail seems very different than you remember it, though of course moonlight can play tricks on your eyes. But you suddenly realize you are not walking on the trail at all, but on what seems to be a dried-up riverbed. You hurry back to the cave entrance. You look around you and realize the whole landscape has changed. While you were in the cave, torrents of water have washed out the trail, yet there is not so much as a puddle left. You shiver. It is cold, much colder than it should be at this time of year. You take a jacket out of your backpack and put it on, but you are still freezing. At least the world about you seems brighter. It's getting light in the east. The sun will soon be up. You look at your watch. It has run down, though you wound it only a few hours ago. Nothing seems to make sense anymore. You know you should get back to the ranch as quickly as possible, yet somehow you feel the only way to change things back to the way they were is to re-enter the cave. If you continue toward the ranch, turn to page 8. If you go back into the cave, turn to page 10. Let's go back into the cave. Turn to page 10. You walk into the interior of the strange cavern, then wait while your eyes become accustomed to the dim, amber light. Gradually, you can make out the 2 tunnels. One curves downward to the right. The other leads upward to the left. It occurs to you that the one leading down may go to the past and the one leading up may go to the future. If you take the tunnel leading to the left, turn to page 20. If you take the tunnel leading to the right, turn to page 61. If you walk outside the cave again, turn to page 21. So if I had the choice between going in the past, back to the past, or going to the future, I think I'd like to try the future. So we're going to take the tunnel leading up to the left. We'll turn to page 20. The tunnel to the left winds around like a spiral, passing several more tunnels. You turn down one of them, then climb steeply. In a few moments, you climb through a hole and emerge in a desert. The weather is extremely hot, certainly over 100 degrees, but the sun is just about to set, so it should be getting cooler. In the distance is a range of mountains, which look extremely high, yet are bare of snow. You have no idea whether you are in the past, the future, or the present. Then you see something that fascinates and disturbs you. The sand seems to be fused into yellowish glass, as if heated in a furnace. As you examine the sand more closely, you feel the air getting even hotter. Suddenly you realize the sun is not setting, but rising. The noontime temperature must be more than life can stand. As the sun rises higher, you feel a blistering wave of heat. The light is almost blinding. Could it be that you are witnessing the end of the world? Turn to page 93. You dive down into the tunnel, hoping you can make it back to an earlier time. Gratefully, you feel cool, damp air coming up from the cave. You are curious to try the next tunnel you come to, thinking that it may show the state of the world just before it began to burn up from the intensifying heat of the dying sun, or that it might show what happened afterward. But you suspect that a tunnel further on might be more likely to lead you back to your own time. Let's take the first tunnel. Let's go to page 31. You take the first tunnel and follow it on and on until you begin to wonder whether you are going around in circles. What can this mean? Perhaps time itself is slowing? You are nearing the point of exhaustion and begin to feel very cold. You see an opening up ahead and stars shining. You step outside on barren ground. It is bitter cold. Even though there is no wind, you know you will freeze if you stay more than a few minutes. Maybe not that long, for the air seems very thin, as if you were on top of a very high mountain. You find yourself gasping for breath. You look up at the clear, cold night sky, studded with thousands of stars. Among the stars, you notice a disk the size of the sun that gives off a dim red light, like a dying ember. The end. Okay, we've made a wrong choice. So we're going to go back to number 93, and we'll make a different choice. Okay, so I've used up my one redo. So let's hope this is a better option. We're going to take the tunnel further along and turn to page 32. After following the passageway for a considerable distance, you enter a very large tunnel that seems as likely as any to lead you back to your own time. You continue along and soon notice that the floor of the tunnel is becoming sandier. Perhaps you are coming to a beach. Then the sand gives way under your feet. You slide through sand and rising dust. You cannot stop yourself. It's too steep. Then there is nothing under your feet, and a moment later you land in deep water. You swim to the surface and catch your breath. You are in an underwater grotto, which seems completely sealed off except for a portion of its roof that is open to the blue sky. You swim to a large, smooth rock sloping into the water. The sand is white and the water transparent. The rocks are made of crystalline material of the most delicate shades of blue. For a moment, you are overwhelmed by the beauty of the scene before you, but you soon begin to wonder whether you can escape from it. There is no way of climbing out through the opening in the roof. You dive down in hopes of finding an underwater passageway that might lead to freedom, and you find one. But could you swim through it before running out of air? If you try to swim through the underwater tunnel, turn to page 58. If you decide to wait, turn to page 64. I think I'd rather resurface, get a breath of air, and then try it again. So we're going to go to page 64. Swimming through the underwater tunnel may be the only way to get out of the grotto, but the risk of drowning seems too great. You explore the rocks in the grotto and think about how you might possibly get up through the roof. Suddenly, a voice calls, "Hello?" You whirl around and notice, for the first time, huddled in the corner, a woman with sparkling blue eyes and a mysterious smile. She is sitting cross-legged, propped against a rock which is shaped in a way that gives her a comfortable seat. In her hands, she is holding a flute, and as you stare in amazement, she plays an unfamiliar melody with a sweetness and purity of tone such as you have never heard. "Hello," you reply. "Tell me, who are you, and how can we get out of here?" "Sit down," she says, "and relax. You have all of the time in the world." "What do you mean?" you reply. "I'm trapped. I slid down from the cave of time, and I want to get out." "Believe me," the woman says, "there's no way to get out. But do not be concerned. It is a beautiful place, and you can be very happy here." "But we'll starve. How long have you been here?" you exclaim. "Forever, and not at all," she replies. "For this is the part of the cave which leads neither to the past nor to the future. Here time does not exist, so of course you will never be hungry or bored, and although you can never get out, you will be here for no time at all." Turn to page 102. You sit down and rest your chin in your hands, unable to believe the fate that has befallen you. To live forever in a timeless world seems worse than death. "Well, to tell the truth, there is a way to get back to your own time," the woman finally says. "But if you follow it, you will not be able to live forever." "I don't care," you say. "Show me the way." "Very well," she says, shaking her head in disbelief. "Dive under the rock ledge beneath me and swim through the tunnel you will find there. You will come up in your own time. Don't worry, it's only a few yards. You can make it." You take a last look around, wave goodbye, and dive. A few seconds later, you surface in a pond just inside the entrance of the Cave of Time. You swim to the shore and run out through the cave entrance into the open air, almost crashing into your Uncle Howard, who has come looking for you. "You're late for dinner," he says. "We wondered what happened to you. You ought to keep better track of time." The end. Alright, well, that's 2 wrong choices. Alright guys, well, in previous videos I probably would have ended the video right here, but I want to hear the correct ending, so I'm going to take a minute, try to find the correct path on the internet, and I will be right back. Okay guys, I am back. That only took, what, like a second, but I actually did a lot of research into this, and I have chosen 2 endings out of a possible, 40? There's 40 possible endings here. Anyway, I've picked 2 endings that I think would be really fun to read. And then at the end of the book here, I'll tell you more about this really interesting book and about some of the other ending options. But let's turn back to page 4. And on this page, we had just exited the cave. We were walking back towards the ranch. And on the last paragraph here, it says, "You know you should get back to the ranch as quickly as possible. Yet, somehow, you feel the only way to change things back to the way they were is to re-enter the cave. If you continue towards the ranch, turn to page 8. If you go back into the cave, turn to page 10. So last time we went back into the cave, I believe, which was page 10. We are going to continue this time on towards the ranch. Now let's go to page 8. As it gets lighter, you realize you can't be on the right track. The canyon seems shallower than it was. The riverbed is strewn with boulders that were never there before. The cold wind chills you to the bone, yet it's the middle of the summer. As you climb to higher ground to get a better view, you notice patches of snow. From the top of a ridge, you survey a barren plain, frozen lakes, and in the distance, a massive range of snow-covered mountains. You begin to realize you are not merely lost. You are lost in time, and you have somehow been transported to an ice age that occurred many thousands of years ago. You walk toward one of the cliffs that borders the canyon, seeking shelter from the wind, and notice an entrance to another cave. You are tempted to go inside, but you feel you should keep moving in hopes of somehow reaching familiar country. If you enter the cave, turn to page 17. If you continue on, turn to page 18. Let's continue onward. We're going to go to page 18. You continue on, following a trail leading up a steep incline. You hear loud, trumpeting sounds from a nearby ravine, the sounds of a large animal. You climb over some rocks and find yourself looking down on one of the largest land animals that ever lived, the woolly mammoth. Huge as this creature is, its size is exaggerated even more by its thick coat of wool. You are cold, desperate, and tired. From your rock ledge, only a few feet over the mammoth, you could drop down on its back, burrow into its warm wool, and ride where it takes you. If you jump down on the woolly mammoth, turn to page 29. If you continue on foot, turn to page 30. We are going to ignore the woolly mammoth. We're going to continue on foot. Turn to page 30. Riding on a mammoth might be fun if you were not cold and hungry and lost, but where would it take you? You continue walking, your spirit sinking. Just as you feel ready to sit down and cry, you see an opening in the ground. You crawl in on your hands and knees. It might provide some warmth, and it might lead to the cave of time. You find yourself in a tunnel. There are other tunnels branching off. You feel sure now that you are in the cave of time. You are eager to take the next tunnel to the surface, but you want to travel a long way forward in time. Maybe you should take a tunnel further on. If you take the first tunnel that you can, turn to page 54. If you take a tunnel further on, turn to page 92. We're going to go further down the tunnel and turn to page 92. You continue a long distance until you come to the next tunnel. From there, it is only a short distance until you reach the surface. An amazing sight meets your eyes. As far as you can see, the land looks like a beautiful park with soft, feathery grass and towering trees. Here and there are clusters of multicolored dome-shaped buildings, connected by ramps, terraces, and walkways. Some people dressed in simple khaki pants and shirts and tan sneakers walk up to you. They do not understand your language, nor you theirs. They look much like the people of your time, except that they are unusually trim, muscular, and healthy-looking, and they are a good deal smaller than your own people. They take you inside a dome-shaped building and show you electronic equipment that looks like a computer. You notice a typewriter, so you sit at it and type a message. The computer prints out a reply. It apparently has access to memory banks containing your language. You soon discover that you are living in the year 3742. Turn to page 56. Through computer instructions, you are able to learn the language, which you find is similar to English, so you are soon able to communicate with your hosts. They are not at all surprised to hear that you have arrived through the Cave of Time. You are not the first, the head of the household tells you, but we have visitors from other times only once in a great while. When someone comes, we are always glad to learn about life in another era, because here we have achieved a sort of paradise. We do not work, and the world is at peace. It is a perfect society. That is why primitive epics, such as yours, interest us so much. If you stay in the perfect society, turn to page 57. If you try to return to the Cave of Time, turn to page 60. Let's stay in the perfect society. We're going to turn to page 57. Your hosts give you a fine bedroom with large windows overlooking the park on one side. On another wall is a beautiful painting of the California seacoast. When you push a button, the painting folds up to the ceiling, revealing a large screen. Your room contains a computer terminal that enables you to select any movie or other program you desire from over 10,000 possibilities. There are even films where you are the main character, and you can make choices as to what will happen next in the story. Then, if you don't like the way the plot is working out, you can go back to an earlier point and make different choices from then on. On your terminal, you can also play games and flash pages of books or magazines on the screen. You can live quite well without even getting out of bed. Eventually, you go exploring. You meet other people, but you find none of them very interesting. So you spend most of your time watching the greatest movies of all time. Gradually, you settle into your new life. One thing disturbs you. No one has made any new movies in the last 300 years. The end. Okay, it's kind of a weird ending, but the reason I picked this is this book was originally published in, I think, 1979 or something like that. So this was their idea of the future, and actually it looks a lot like our future. I mean, they kind of predicted it, people who just sit in bed and stare at the screen, don't really interact with other people. It actually doesn't sound like much of a paradise. Another interesting thing I thought about this ending is they talk about how in the future you can actually play movies of yourself and you can make different choices. I mean, that's pretty much just video games, right? Back in 1979, they really didn't have any concept of what video games were like today, where we can just save and reload and we're the hero in the game. Anyway, this ending just totally sounds like today, so I had to pick this ending. But let's choose another ending now. We're going to go to a different path. And for this path, we're going to go all the way back to page 3. The last paragraph here says, you wonder how long you've been in the cave. You are not hungry. You don't feel you have been sleeping. You wonder whether to try to walk back home by moonlight or whether to wait for dawn, rather than risk losing your footing on the steep and rocky trail. So from here, we're going to wait. We're going to turn to page 5. You wait until morning, but as the rosy wisps of dawn begin to light the eastern sky, a chill and forbidding wind begins to blow. If you seek shelter, turn to page 6. If you brave the freezing wind to see more of the world about you, turn to page 16. We are going to seek shelter and go to page 6. You step into a niche in the rocks to escape the merciless blasts of wind and lean back against the rock wall. Suddenly, it crumbles under your weight, causing you to fall backward down a muddy slope and into a pond. The sun shines brightly down on you as you pick yourself up, dripping wet, and wade to the grassy shore. You look back at the rock rising out of the pond, but you can't see where you fell through. While you were collecting your senses, a horse comes prancing up, its rider dressed in tin armor, a knight out of the history books, enough to make you laugh. The horseman lifts off his helmet and laughs himself. "What a place for a bath," he calls out. "Well, it was worth it. You're cleaner than a pig." He almost falls off his horse. He is laughing so hard. "But climb on, and I'll take you back to the castle," he says. "We'll see if we can't make a human out of you yet." If you accept the ride back to the castle, turn to page 22. If you decline the invitation and try to find your way back into the Cave of Time, turn to page 114. We are going to accept the ride and ride to the castle. We're going to go to page 22. The laughing knight helps you up on his horse, and you sit uncomfortably as it canters over the countryside. After traveling a mile or so, you come to a great stone castle. The horse trots across the drawbridge and into the stable. "Jump," the knight calls to you, and you slide off the rear of the horse. The knight escorts you into the grand chamber of the castle. All about you are stewards, attendants, and knights. A few minutes later, you find yourself bowing before the king himself. After hearing your story, the king looks gravely at his advisors and knights and stewards. "Does anyone believe this tale?" he asks. Everyone cries back, "No, your majesty," or "Certainly not, your majesty." "Then tell us the truth," the king roars at you. If you insist on telling the truth, turn to page 36. If you try to make up a plausible story, turn to page 37. Well, from here, it doesn't really matter what we tell the king. The outcome's going to be the same. But let's turn to page 36 and 37. See what our options are. "I know it sounds strange, your majesty," you say, "but I have no reason to incur your wrath by making up a false story." The king looks around at his courtiers. They all have grave expressions on their faces, as if you have committed some unpardonable sin. Turn to page 11. So here on page 37, if we tell a lie to the king, this is how that turns out. "Oh, I'm so sorry to have intruded upon your royal domain, your majesty," you say humbly, trying to think up a good story as fast as you can. "It is true, sire. I have been badly mistreated by my wicked stepfather, with whom I live, and I place myself under your wise and just protection." "Who is this wicked stepfather, and where does he live?" the king asks. "If he is wicked enough, we may want him to be one of our knights," he adds, laughing, as do all the courtiers. "He lives beyond that hill," you say, pointing toward the high wooded ridge, "and his name is Smith. The king laughs once again. Then your stepfather must be a fish, he says. For beyond yonder hill is Loch Ness. Turn to page 11. Off to the tower, the king shouts. 2 knights leap forward and drag you out of the chamber, and with spears at your back, force you to climb 48 stone steps to the tower prison, a tiny cylindrical room with one small window looking out over the moat and pasture land beyond. The only furniture is a bed of straw. You realize you are back in the early days of feudal Europe, where the only laws are the king's whims. You have no idea how long he intends to keep you in the tower. There is one possibility of escape. The water in the moat, about 25 feet almost directly below your window, is quite deep. If you jump out far enough, you should land in the deep water and not be hurt. If you jump, turn to page 12. If not, turn to page 13. We're going to stay in the tower and turn to page 13. You decide to wait, but soon regret it. A guard visits you twice a day and brings you only black bread and water. In a few days, you feel almost too weak to escape, even if you have the chance. But just as you are beginning to despair of ever regaining your freedom, the guard walks in, smiling. The king has ordered you out of here, he says. Oh, we've a much more important prisoner. A man who insulted the king's horse. He laughs in your face. You don't know whether he's telling the truth or not, but he holds the door and waves you out. You walk down the long flight of stone steps to the main courtyard, free again, at least for the moment. The drawbridge is down, and there seems to be nothing in the way of your leaving the castle. There is a splendid black horse tied up near you, probably owned by one of the knights. It occurs to you that you could cover a lot of ground on that horse before anyone realizes what happened. If you mount the horse and ride off, turn to page 14. If you ask the king for refuge, turn to page 15. We're going to take the horse and ride off. Let's turn to page 14. In a moment, you are across the bridge and galloping over the countryside, feeling a good deal smarter than the king and his knights. When you pass some shepherds and wave, they wave back. You stop and rest at the cottage of a friendly goatherd, who feeds you a good dinner. Do not fear the king, he says. He is a fool who sits and drinks grog all day. His only concern is deciding who to put in the tower. His own knights laugh at him, and he is more likely to fall from his throne than you from your horse. Be off now, and on to merry England, for great things await you there. Godspeed and good fortune. Your energies are renewed by good food and drink, and your horse, too, is ready to ride. You thank your host warmly and ride off to new adventures and a new life, almost 1,000 years before you were born. The end. And with that, we have experienced a total of 4 endings out of a possible 40 that this book offers. And that kind of brings me to the next point. As I was researching the best ending for this book, I came across this map of the choices. And here's what I found out. This book, as you can see, it's not very thick at all. And so, because this book has so many choices, 40 possible endings with all the different choices in between, it really doesn't leave much as far as a story. Like every one of these pages is just very, very quick. There's not a whole lot of content. You're just making choice after choice after choice, and then you get to an ending. And, and that's fun for an adventure, but to do it right, you probably need a much thicker book than this. So it just barely skims the surface of kind of a story. And by the way, I don't know who made this map, but it is really a really good map. If you happen to know who made this, let me know, and I'll put a note in the comments section. Now, as far as a rating for the book, well, first of all, I'd say if you have access to this book, give it a try. I mean, it's a fun, quick read. You could come across tons of endings. So, as far as my personal rating of this book, I would give it a three carabiners out of 5, just because it just barely skims the surface of a story. You know, it's kind of more just about fun choices, and there's really not much of a plot or a story here. Anyway, guys, feel free to stay tuned, and I will show some pictures here from the book, some illustrations. Otherwise, I want to say thanks for coming along with me. I do hope you'll join me for the next book, which I hope to do if I can get a copy of The Return to the Cave of Time. We will do that book next. Otherwise, I'll pick a different book if I'm not able to get a copy of that. Thanks for coming along with me, and I do hope you'll check out my other videos, and stay tuned for more great content. If you enjoyed this, please take a minute here just to give me a thumbs up, or even leave a comment. Let me know if you enjoyed this and if you'd like more content like this. Thank you so much. I do hope to see you in the next video.